What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of Quincy Sports. And today, I have a pretty fun video planned. I'm going to be ranking my top 15 for college football. Most people do a top 10. I'm going to do top 15 because I think you get to talk about more teams. It's more a little inclusive. I can't do a full top 25. That's just not going to happen. But 15, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to do top 15. See and see what we can get out of that. You might like it, you might not, but I'm gonna tell you who I think the 15 best teams in college football have looked like so far. So let's get into it. Sorry, my throat's really bad. I was screaming at the game a lot, and I've had a cough for a hot minute. But anyway, let's do it. All right, so the first team on our list that I want to talk about. It's a team that kind of came out of nowhere and looked dominant yesterday. Absolutely dominant. Took Michigan State to the woodshed at home. That was embarrassing. An embarrassing loss for MSU. But Washington looked great. A team that had a really disappointing season last year. They have new quarterback, Indiana transfer Michael Penix. Michael Penix kind of was disappointing in Indiana he was really good at IU. Kind of went out, not playing that great, but a change of scenery is, I think, what he needs. And and man, did he look good yesterday. So Washington 3-0. One thing that all these teams have in common is they are all 3-0. So Washington 15. They look good. We'll see how much they can keep it up. I wonder who do they play next week. I'm gonna try to find that out. Hold on. They have Stanford next week. They're 13.5 point favorites. So let's see how long Washington's better. Next team we have is NC State. They defeated Texas Tech, survived that scare week 1 against East Carolina. They've been looking really good. I got NC State at 14. They're 12 in the AP poll. They take on UConn next week. They are 38.5. They are 38 point favorites right now against UConn, and then they have Clemson next week. So that should be an interesting game. So we'll see. We'll see what that has in store. But I have NC State at 14. At 13, I have Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a team that I have them a lot higher than a lot of people have them. The AP poll has them at 16. I've been impressed with Ole Miss. They took down Troy, Central Arkansas, and Georgia Tech. They've been looking, I think, better than some other teams that are ahead of them. Like in the AP poll, I think they've looked better than Oregon. I think they've looked better than Utah. I think they've looked better than a lot of people have thought they've been. So they've definitely looked better than NC State, Washington. So I got Ole Miss at 13. At 12, I have Oklahoma State. Pretty standard. I think this is where most people have NC State. I have them at 9. Or the AP poll has them at 9. I think that's a little high for. I think that's a little high for NC State, but for OK State, beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 63-7. Beat Arizona State and beat Central Michigan. So yeah, next week they play at Baylor. That will be a good game. That's going to be a really important game for the Big 12. We'll see if Oklahoma State can rise to the occasion in that game, but I have them at 12. At number 11, I have Arkansas. Now, I would have them a little bit higher. I would. But they almost suffered a horrific upset to Missouri State yesterday. Missouri State actually led the majority of that game. Missouri State was up. But Arkansas scored 21 in the fourth quarter and won by 11. They survive a scare at the hands of their old coach, Bobby Petrino, who went out on really bad terms in Arkansas. So if they would have lost that game, that would have been by far the worst upset we've seen this past year, and maybe one of the worst we've seen in the past few years. Especially since Arkansas was favored by 26 in that game. But they did get the win. They did shut it down in the fourth quarter, so I'll give them credit for that. Next week they have a date with A&M. That's part of the reason maybe this game was close. Looking ahead towards A&M, maybe A&M opens as 2.5 point favorites. That's going to be a dogfight of a game. I think this game's played at Jerry's World. I think. Yeah, AT&T Stadium. So neutral site by 50-50 ticket sales. So we'll see if Arkansas can beat A&M again. They beat them last year. See if they can rise to the occasion again. And then they have Alabama the week after that. So we'll see what Arkansas can do in these next upcoming games. They have a chance to really make a statement. At number 10, I have Clemson. I don't think Clemson is. The AP poll has them at 5. I don't think they are anywhere near that good. I don't see it. I don't think Clemson's the fifth best team. These teams I have at 9, 8, 7, and 6 and 5, I think are way better than Clemson. I just don't think they're that great. DJ Uiagalelei is not that great. Kind of struggled with Louisiana Tech. Yes, actually not really. Louisiana Tech didn't really score till garbage time, but still close kind of final score. Furman was in the game. They only beat Furman by like 20, and they were favored by like 50. Struggled with Georgia Tech. I'm not seeing great things when it comes to Clemson, so that's why I have them lower than some of these other teams. At number 9, I have Penn State. Penn State has looked really good to me, and I think they're 14 in the AP poll. I have them at 9. Beat Purdue in a great game. That was a tough environment. I mean, Purdue came out swinging that game. First game of the year. I thought that was a really good win for Penn State, that they went out and blew out Ohio, and then took Auburn to the shed yesterday. They beat Auburn like they owed them money. I mean, oh my goodness, they whooped Auburn up and down the field, especially in the second half. It was 14-6 at halftime, but after halftime, my goodness, Penn State. And I feel like they're a team that other teams in the Big Ten should be weary of, because they got Sean Clifford, who, what is he, like 25? He's been there forever. And he's a really experienced quarterback that has played in big games. And this is his last ride. So I think that Penn State is actually set up for the future really, really well, because they got Sean Clifford, and then they got Drew Aller, who was like, a really, really high-rated quarterback recruit. He was supposed to go to Ohio State, but he went to Penn State instead. So Penn State could be looking at a really good year, and especially they play Central Michigan and Northwestern the next 2 weeks. Then they got at Michigan, and then they have Ohio State at home. They might be able to, if they could split those, maybe beat one of Ohio State or Michigan. I think Penn State's a dangerous team. At 8. At 8, I have Kentucky. Kentucky is a team that people thought were going to be pretty good to start the year. They were ranked in pretty much everyone's poll, but they've started this year really well. Especially when they played at Florida, everyone's like, "Oh, Florida's back." Anthony Richardson, and then they went out and beat Florida, beat them pretty badly. They beat them by 10. They had 2 other easy wins. They got Northern Illinois next week, and then they're at Ole Miss, so that'll be a really good game. But Kentucky has looked great. Their defense in particular has been really impressive. Only 16, 13 points, and then 0 against Youngstown State. So Kentucky has been looking really good. They still got to play at Tennessee. They play Georgia at the end of the year. So we'll see what Kentucky has in store the rest of the season. At 7, I have Tennessee. Now, Tennessee and Kentucky, I feel like, are interchangeable. I think they're about the same caliber. I think Tennessee's a little bit better. But if you want to put Kentucky above Tennessee, I'd be fine with that. I think they're pretty much interchangeable. They went on, because their resume, so far in the season, they're like, it's only 3 games. 3 games is already 25% of the season. That's a quarter of the season. So we'll see. But beat the bejesus out of Ball State and Akron, and then beat a tough Pitt team on the road in overtime. What would you say, Pitt and Florida are about the same caliber of team? But Tennessee and Kentucky both took care of them on the road. So I thought that was a great win for Tennessee. Pitt's a real good team. Keaton Slovis is legit from what I've seen. So that was a good win for Tennessee, especially since they were down early in that game. They were down 10-0 off the rip. Came back, won that game in overtime. I think that's cause to be excited if you're a Tennessee fan. They host Florida next week, and they're actually 9.5-point favorites, which is a lot more than I thought they would be. I thought this game would be about 4-point favorite range for Tennessee. 9.5-point favorites at home, and game day is going to be there. This is a big game for Tennessee because Florida has historically had their numbers, so they can come out and beat Florida. Then they got LSU the week after that. It's at LSU, but LSU hadn't been looking that great. And then they play Alabama. So I think Tennessee's got it. Headed Hooker's an amazing quarterback. I think they have a team that can get it done. And maybe they'd have to beat Georgia, and they play at Georgia near the end of the year. Dark horse Tennessee and Kentucky, I think, are both going to make a run for the SEC East. I'm not saying they're going to win it. I'm going to say they are going to make a run at it, and they're going to be two teams that are going to be tough to beat. At number 6. USC. Now, we haven't really seen much from USC. They beat the bejesus out of Rice in the first game, and then they kill. Now, they only beat Stanford by 14. But here's the thing. They beat Stanford by 14, but they had a 28-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Then they benched all their starters, and Stanford scored 2 garbage time touchdowns. And then they went out and killed Fresno State in a game that I thought would have been closer. USC was favored by 12, and they more than covered the spread. Now, here's the thing. They are at Oregon State next week. Oregon State has upset USC before. In fact, I think they upset USC when they were number 1 in the country at one point. But they've been looking good. Caleb Williams, their quarterback, transfer from Oklahoma, and their coach, transfer from Oklahoma, has been really good. So USC, haven't seen much out of them, but they have the potential. And they haven't really had the opportunity yet. So I'm going to put them at 6. I'm a big fan of what I see out of USC. At number 5, Oklahoma. Now, I think one of the storylines through this season is who's going to be better, Oklahoma or USC. And right now, they're about the same, pretty much. Oklahoma went out and killed UTEP first week, killed Kent State in the second week. And then they played Nebraska just after they hired Scott Frost. You're like, oh, maybe, you know what? This could be the only game on Nebraska's schedule that matters. They could come out swinging, man. But no, Nebraska scored the first touchdown of the game to go up 7-0. And it was all Oklahoma after that. It was 7-0. And then basically in a blink of an eye, it was 49-7. I mean, that game was a massacre. Dylan Gabriel, in particular, really impressed. I think he had over 100 yards rushing, threw for 2 touchdowns. Their running back, Eric Gray, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns. They ran it, did whatever they wanted. I've been really impressed with Oklahoma. They have some easy games coming up. Kansas State and TCU, they should win both of those. And then they play Texas in the Red River rivalry. And the way Texas played against Alabama, that could be a good game. We'll see how good Texas continues to play. But Texas hasn't been looking too bad. But that'll be a big game coming up for Oklahoma. All right, now, if I were to rank these teams in tiers, I think Tier 3 would be Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, NC State, Washington. Tier 2 of teams, I think, would be Clemson. These 6. USC, Tennessee, Clemson, Penn State, Kentucky, and Oklahoma. These 4 teams are Tier 1. Now, at 4, I have Ohio State. Now, the thing about Ohio State is, okay, everyone was picking either them or Alabama to win the national title opening the year. They played Notre Dame at home, and they're like, oh, this should be an easy. I mean, Notre Dame's good, but Ohio State, you think, should have this one. They're supposed to be way better. And Notre Dame came out and kind of ran their show in the first half. First half, Notre Dame was doing really, really well. It almost won the game. Ohio State scored a touchdown in the third quarter and a touchdown in the fourth quarter to escape with an 11-point win at home over the Irish. But then you're like, okay, Notre Dame probably better than the consensus. The consensus after that game was, oh, Notre Dame better than we thought. Ohio State maybe, nah, but Notre Dame better than we thought. Notre Dame then goes out and loses to Marshall. And here's the thing, right? Marshall didn't just like get lucky with that game or whatever. Marshall was up 11. Marshall literally was up 11, the same amount Ohio State was. And then Notre Dame scored the garbage time. They scored a touchdown with like 10 seconds left to cut the lead to 5. But so you're telling me Notre Dame, Marshall, and Ohio State are beating Notre Dame by the same amount? Really? And Ohio State was at home, and Marshall's on the road. I think that's cause for concern. I'm sorry. I know Ohio State. What did Ohio State do their next 2 games? They beat Arkansas State 45-12, and then they beat Toledo 77-21. Wow. Hopefully you guys took the over in that game. What was the over under? 63. There were 98 points in that game. My goodness. And Toledo actually was hanging around for a little bit. Not really. Actually, not really. But I think these 3 teams, are for sure at least looking better than Ohio State. And one of those teams is Michigan. I think Michigan has looked better than Ohio State. Now, a lot of people are complaining that Michigan hasn't played anyone. Me too. I would rather see Michigan play better teams than Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. But there are a lot of teams that have played nobodies and have almost lost, i.e. Arkansas, i.e. Clemson, i.e. like there are teams out there that have played these caliber of teams and almost lost. So the fact that Michigan has not even come close to even having a team in the game, and I think J.J. McCarthy's going to be I think McCarthy's an upgrade from Cade McNamara. I mean, last year I don't think that would have been the case, but this year, I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be a game changer for Michigan. And I think they're going to be a lot better. I think the Michigan-Ohio State game this year could be just as big as it was last year. I think both those teams could be sitting at 11-0 going into that game. But if I had to pick right now, I think Michigan has looked better. I'm not saying I would pick them in the game. The game's going to be at Ohio State. That's a massive advantage. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm just saying right now Michigan has looked better. At number 2, I have Alabama. Now, Alabama, think about them is everyone expected them to go in and kill Texas. It was a 1-point game. And, the heat and the humidity and blah, 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 blah. Alabama had 100 yards in penalties. But here's the thing. Texas, we found out better than we thought they were. Here's the thing. You could say Bama should have lost this, should have done this, should have done that. The fact is good teams, bad teams find ways to lose games. Good teams, even if everything goes awry, they will find a way to win, and that's what Alabama did. So I'll give them a pass there for that game. And then number 1, obviously, is Georgia. Georgia has looked by far and away, the best team. Like, not even close. I mean, what did they do? They beat Oregon 49-3. Oh, Oregon wasn't as good as we. Fuck, I can't even talk. Oregon wasn't as good as we thought they were. Well, then they went out and killed BYU. So I don't really know what you wanna do. I don't know what you want to do about that. And so you know what? Georgia. Oh wow. Jalen Wild just caught a game-winning touchdown against the Ravens. Good for them. I mean, I don't think anyone's beating Georgia. I mean, at least so far, they've killed everyone they've played. They've looked way better than Alabama, if you ask me. They look like a more complete team. They look so far just as good as they were last year, if not better. I don't think their defense is as good as they were last year, even though their defense is okay. Last year's Georgia defense is the best defense we've seen in modern history. Maybe like 2011 Alabama was better. But 2022 Georgia, 2011 Alabama, 2 best defenses we've seen in a long-ass time. But their defense, I don't think is as good, although they're still top 5 in the country. Their offense, I think, is better. Stetson Bennett is better. I think the playmakers he has around him are better. Because remember, they had like George Pickens out like the entire year last year. But I think Georgia could be just as good this year as they were last year. They play Kent State next week, and then Missouri and Auburn. Their next few games are against not good teams. Kent State, Missouri, Auburn, Vanderbilt is their next games. To end the year, though, they got Florida, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, Kentucky, and then Georgia Tech. Not Georgia Tech. So 4 tough teams to end the year. That will really tell the tale for Georgia, is those last 4 games. But for now, they're going to be number 1 rolling into that. Because we're not losing to Kent State, Missouri, Auburn, or Vanderbilt. Because those teams all suck. But this is my top 15. Let me know what you'd change below. But hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day.